I'm 63 and I soaked my feet in this every night, and the swelling I had for years was gone. There was a time not too long ago when I couldn't wear my favorite shoes. And I don't mean because they were out of style. I mean because my feet had swollen up so much that even my stretchy sneakers felt like they were cutting off my circulation. I remember looking down at my ankles one morning in June, and I could press my thumb into the skin, and it would leave an indent that took almost a minute to disappear. My daughter came to visit, and the first thing she said was, "Mom, what's going on with your feet?" And honestly, I had just kind of resigned myself to thinking this was just what happened when you turn 60. You get older, your body changes, things swell up a little, and you learn to live with it. I went to my doctor about it, and she took a quick look, nodded, and said, "Elevation. Keep your feet up whenever you can. Maybe wear compression socks." So I tried that. I bought 3 pairs of compression socks. I elevated my legs every evening. I propped them up on pillows while I watched television. And you know what? It helped maybe 20%. The swelling would go down a little bit while my feet were up. But the moment I stood up to go to the kitchen or get ready for bed, that heaviness came right back. This had been going on for 3.5 years, and it was worse in the summer when the heat would set in and my feet would feel like they belonged to someone twice my size. I was at a yoga retreat in Austin one weekend, and I was talking to another woman in my age group, probably around 65, and she mentioned that she used to have the same problem. She told me that one night she was reading something online about edema in older women, and she came across information about Epsom salt soaks. Now, I'll be honest with you. I had heard of Epsom salt before. I'd used it in a bath maybe once or twice when my shoulders were sore from too much gardening. But I never connected it to feet swelling, and I definitely didn't think it could be powerful enough to actually reverse something that I'd been dealing with for years. But she said something that really stuck with me. She said that by the end of the first month of doing nightly Epsom salt soaks, her feet looked like they belonged to someone 15 years younger. I was skeptical, but I was also desperate enough to try anything that didn't involve compression socks that made my feet sweat. So that week, I went to the grocery store, picked up a big bag of Epsom salt, and I committed to giving it a real try. What I did was pretty straightforward, and that's actually one of the things I love about this remedy. I filled a basin with warm water, not hot water because heat can actually make swelling worse by dilating your blood vessels too much and increasing fluid retention. I poured in 2 cups of Epsom salt and I let it dissolve while I settled into my favorite chair with a cup of herbal tea. Then I added 5 drops of lavender essential oil because I wanted the experience to feel luxurious and calming, and because lavender has mild anti-inflammatory properties that seemed worth the extra 30 seconds it took to add it. I soaked my feet for 25 to 30 minutes, and I did this 5 nights a week, giving myself 2 nights off to let my body do its own thing. The cost of this was absolutely minimal. I calculated it out, and each soak cost me roughly 25 cents. That's less than the price of a fancy coffee drink, and I was doing it 5 times a week. On that first night, I noticed something immediately. My feet felt incredibly relaxed. It was like the tension that I didn't even realize I was holding in my feet just melted away into the warm water. But I didn't see any visible reduction in swelling that first evening. I went to bed thinking, well, that felt nice at least. By the third day, something shifted. I put on a pair of shoes that had been tight for months, and they fit differently. They weren't loose, but they weren't pinching anymore. I remember calling my daughter and saying, "I think it's working." And she laughed at me because I sounded so surprised. By the end of the second week, the change was visible enough that I mentioned it to my yoga students. 2 of my regulars asked me what I was doing differently because they said my legs looked less puffy. And then by the end of the first full month, the swelling was essentially gone. I mean, completely gone. My ankles looked like they belonged to my body again. The skin wasn't shiny and stretched anymore. I could wear regular shoes without thinking about it. I stopped wearing those compression socks because they weren't necessary anymore. And here's the thing that really surprised me. The swelling didn't come back. Now, I've continued with the soaks because I love how they make me feel. But even on nights when I skip the soak, my feet stay normal. The chronic water retention that had been my constant companion for over 3 years essentially disappeared within 4 weeks. Now, the reason this works is actually rooted in some really solid chemistry and physiology. And I want to walk you through it because I think understanding the why makes you more committed to the how. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. When you soak your feet in warm water with Epsom salt, magnesium is absorbed through your skin in a process called transdermal absorption. This is actually well documented in the scientific literature. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found that magnesium can indeed be absorbed through the skin, and that this absorption can raise magnesium levels in the body. Now, here's what's relevant to swelling. Most women over 60 are magnesium deficient. The research suggests that between 50 and 80% of Americans don't meet the recommended dietary allowance for magnesium. And that percentage is even higher in people over 60 because we tend to absorb fewer minerals from food as we age, and our kidneys become less efficient at retaining magnesium. One study from the National Institutes of Health found that nearly 68% of Americans consume less than the recommended amount of magnesium. Magnesium is essential for relaxing blood vessels. And when your blood vessels are relaxed, blood flow improves. When blood flow improves, your body doesn't retain as much fluid in your extremities because the circulation is more efficient. The other half of the equation is the sulfate component of Epsom salt. Sulfate supports what's called phase 2 detoxification in the liver, which is a crucial pathway for eliminating excess water and salt from your body. So you've got magnesium relaxing your blood vessels and improving circulation, and you've got sulfate supporting your body's natural detoxification pathways. It's a 1-2 punch. But I want to go deeper into why feet swell in the first place after 60, because if you understand the mechanism, you'll understand why this remedy is so targeted and effective. The primary reason women over 60 experience foot and ankle swelling is something called venous insufficiency. This happens because the tiny valves in the veins in your legs, the ones that are supposed to push blood back up toward your heart against gravity, become weaker as you age. They lose some of their elasticity and strength, so blood starts to pool in your lower legs and feet, and fluid leaks out into the surrounding tissue. This is completely normal and very common, but it's also very treatable. Beyond venous insufficiency, there are several other factors that accelerate swelling after 60. First, there's the simple fact that we tend to sit or stand in one position for longer periods. I spent years sitting at a desk as a principal for 7 to 8 hours a day. When you're stationary, gravity really does a number on fluid retention in your lower extremities. Second, low magnesium causes your blood vessels to constrict slightly, which means your circulation isn't as efficient, and your body responds by retaining more fluid. Third, if you're consuming too much sodium, your body holds on to water to maintain the proper balance of electrolytes. Fourth, certain medications are notorious for causing fluid retention. I have friends who take amlodipine for blood pressure, and they all complain about swollen feet. I have another friend on low-dose prednisone for an autoimmune condition, and swelling was one of her major side effects. So you're looking at this perfect storm: aging valves in your veins, possible magnesium deficiency, medication side effects, dietary sodium, reduced activity, and reduced circulation, all combining to create the kind of chronic swelling that becomes your new normal. What's really beautiful about the Epsom salt solution is that it addresses multiple points in that cascade at once. You're not just treating a symptom, you're addressing the magnesium deficiency that's making your vessels constrict. You're improving circulation and venous return. You're supporting your body's detoxification pathways so it can eliminate excess fluid more effectively. And honestly, You're also creating a ritual of self-care that signals to your body that you're paying attention to it and taking care of it. And that matters more than we often give it credit for. Now, let me give you some deeper cuts on how to optimize this protocol, because not all Epsom salt is created equal, and there are some modifications that can genuinely double the effectiveness of what you're doing. First, when you're buying Epsom salt, look for USP grade Epsom salt. USP stands for United States Pharmacopoeia, and it means the salt has been tested for purity and quality at the pharmaceutical level. You can find this at any drugstore, and it costs virtually the same as the agricultural grade Epsom salt. But the purity matters because agricultural grade can contain heavy metals or other contaminants that you don't want absorbing through your skin. Second, and this is a game changer, add 1 cup of raw apple cider vinegar to your soak. The vinegar enhances something called osmotic pull, which means it actually draws more fluid out of the surrounding tissue and into the water of the soak. There's also preliminary research suggesting that apple cider vinegar has mild anti-inflammatory properties. So now you've got 3 mechanisms working: magnesium absorption, sulfate detoxification, and osmotic pull from the vinegar. A woman in my yoga class tried this modification, and she said it was noticeably more effective than the Epsom salt alone. She said her feet felt less heavy after just 3 days. Third, here's something that seems almost silly but genuinely works. Prop your feet up on a pillow while you're soaking. What this does is reduce the work your circulatory system has to do to push blood back up from your feet. You're essentially giving your venous system a break while you're actively treating it with the magnesium and sulfate. One of my students told me that when she started elevating her feet during the soak, she could see visible fluid moving out of her feet within 10 minutes. She said it was almost strange to watch the swelling reduce while she was sitting there. She said her feet went from looking like sausages to looking like feet again in just 3 minutes of elevation plus soak time. Fourth, consistency matters more than perfection. 5 nights a week is the sweet spot because it gives you enough regularity to really shift your baseline, but it also gives your body 2 nights to do its own regulatory work. If you only soak once or twice a week, the swelling will start to return between soaks because you haven't addressed the underlying magnesium deficiency. You need to soak consistently enough to actually build up magnesium levels in your system. Now, I do want to address something important, and this is the part where I put on my responsible health coach hat. There are certain types of swelling that are not appropriate for a home remedy, and you need to know the difference. If you develop swelling in only one leg, and especially if one leg is noticeably more swollen than the other, that could indicate a blood clot, which is a condition called deep vein thrombosis, or DVT. That is a medical emergency, and you need to see a doctor immediately. If your swelling is accompanied by shortness of breath or chest pain, that could indicate heart failure or a cardiac issue. And again, that's something you need to address with a medical professional right away. If you have what's called pitting edema, which is when you press your thumb into the swelling and it leaves an indent that takes several minutes or longer to disappear, and that pitting edema isn't resolving even after a month of consistent soaking, you should check with your doctor because that level of swelling might indicate something more systemic going on with your kidneys or your thyroid. But for the kind of swelling that most of us experience after 60, the kind where both feet swell gradually over time, where it gets worse as the day goes on and improves when you lie down, the kind that's really just venous insufficiency and fluid retention from aging and sitting too much and magnesium deficiency, this protocol is genuinely transformative. I want to tell you something else that surprised me. After I'd been doing the Epsom salt soaks for about 6 weeks, I started noticing other benefits that weren't directly related to the swelling. My sleep improved. I was falling asleep faster and waking up more rested. My muscle tension decreased. I had been dealing with low-level muscle soreness in my calves for years, and that improved significantly. My mood felt lighter. I think that combination of better magnesium levels, better circulation, and the ritual of self-care all contributed to that. One of my yoga students even mentioned that her blood pressure dropped after starting the soaks. And while I can't say that's a direct result of the Epsom salt because there are so many variables, it's interesting that multiple people noticed secondary benefits beyond just the swelling resolution. What I'm saying is that this isn't just a fix for puffy feet. It's an investment in your overall health and your relationship with your body. The investment is so minimal that I think everyone over 60 should be doing this, regardless of whether they have visible swelling. 25 cents per soak, 30 minutes of your time, a ritual that makes you feel nurtured and cared for, and a genuine physiological benefit in terms of magnesium levels and circulation. That's a deal that makes sense to me. I have been soaking my feet 5 nights a week for over 2 years now, and the swelling has never come back. My ankles are slim again. I can wear all my shoes. I don't have that heavy, tight feeling in my feet anymore. And I sleep better and feel calmer as a side benefit. I'm 63, and my feet look and feel like they belong to someone who takes care of herself. Because I do. And now you have the tools to do the same thing. In the next video, I'm going to talk about another home remedy that's been hiding in your kitchen cabinet. Something that most of us use as a condiment that has genuinely powerful anti-inflammatory properties. And it involves coffee and a specific spice that most people would never think to combine. That one changed my energy levels and my joint pain, and I think it could change yours too. For now, try the Epsom salt soaks. Give it 4 weeks. Be consistent. Use the apple cider vinegar if you want to optimize it. Elevate your feet during the soak, and watch what happens to your feet and to how you feel overall. You deserve to move through the world without that heaviness pulling you down.